Hi there, my name's Felicia. I'm one of the other naturalists here at the county parks, and I'm back again this week to continue our A to Z series with the letter I for Indiana bat. So don't let the name fool you. Indiana bats are found in more states than Indiana, but Indiana is where they were discovered and where over half of them will hibernate in the winter. The Indiana bat is actually just one of 8 species of bat found here in Elkhart County, listed as state endangered. In terms of identifying an Indiana bat, it can be a little tricky because they are bats, they're nocturnal, so you'll see them in the dark normally, and they look very similar to 2 other species we have here in the county, the little brown bat and the northern long-eared bat. To actually positively identify an Indiana bat, you have to look for a number of characteristics. That could be the pinkish tint on their face, how much contrast they have between their fur color on their back and their stomachs, the size of their feet, even how long the hairs are between their toes. But as a starting point, you can look for a medium-sized bat about 3.5 to 5.5 inches long. They're going to have a wingspan of about 10 inches, and they're going to weigh anywhere between 5 to 10 grams depending on if it's before, during, or after their hibernation. So to maintain that 5 to 10 grams, Indiana bats are going to be insectivores. So they're going to have a diet made up of insects. They're going to prefer things like moss and flies, but they can actually catch up to 3,000 insects in a feeding. So they're one of the best natural forms of pest control we have. So to find these insects, they don't rely on their eyes, but they rely on their ears. They use echolocation. So echolocation is used by a variety of animals and other bats, and it's going to be when an animal emits a sound and then they listen for the sound to return. So Indiana bats will make a high-pitched click or a ping sound. And when that noise bounces back to them, it tells them where their prey is, but it could also tell them where a tree is or help them navigate around other obstacles. So they do rely on their ears, but they still have great eyesight. So the saying blind as a bat is actually just a myth. So if we take a closer look at this mount here, we can see those small eyes. We also see their ears with that nice dome shape helping the sound get in there. And then if you look closely, we can see their teeny tiny teeth, and those are going to be razor sharp teeth. So this isn't an Indiana bat, but these are going to be what their teeth look similar to, and those sharp teeth are going to be really good for getting through those insect exoskeletons. We'll also notice their wings. So they're the only mammal that's going to fly. So we see these bones right here, and then once we get into the actual wing, you'll see these long bones, and those are actually going to be their fingers. So they have webbed fingers that make up their wing. You'll also notice that their wing is really thin, but that helps them. It makes their wings very flexible, so they have that up on birds. So birds have very thick wings. And then to be able to fly, they're going to have really strong chest muscles. So they have something called a keel, which is going to be a bone that's attached to their sternum or their breastbone, and that's going to be what connects those strong muscles to allow them to fly. Another thing they'll have claws. Their toes have extra tendons, and their kneecaps are actually, so they're backwards from a normal mammal's. So bats are going to have a few adaptations that make them different, but for the most part their skeletal structure is going to be really similar to other mammals, and that's because they are mammals. So they're going to share all those mammal characteristics like having fur, giving birth to live young. Live young are going to drink milk, and they're also going to be warm-blooded. But there is a catch with Indiana bats and a lot of bats in our area is they like to use some outside sources to help them be warm-blooded. So they can regulate their temperature definitely, but they like to do it a little more efficiently by using things like the sun and also looking for places that are well insulated to roost. So you may have seen something like this before, and this is called a bat house. They're made specifically so that bats have a safe and warm place to rest. So they have this nice opening at the bottom for the bats to come and go as they please. And then inside they usually have a groove or a net along the panel or along the back so that the bats are able to get a grip and hang inside there. They're going to be placed intentionally in places that get just the right amount of sun. So you don't want to get too much sun so that it's too hot in here, but getting a good 8 hours of sun will keep the bats nice and warm. And you can place them on trees. I've seen them on poles. And at Bonneville Mill County Park, we have Briar Patch Shelter, and I've seen them attached right there on the side of the shelter. So Indiana bats will also roost behind tree bark. So it's always good to have a mixture of old and new growth to make for good bat habitat. And within their habitat, they'll have several places to roost. They'll move back and forth depending on things like protection or even just the weather. So famously, bats roost upside down, and they can do that because some of those adaptations we talked about with their anatomy, like those backward kneecaps, they're also going to have special tendons in their toes to help them lock into place. But why do they hang upside down? And it's because they can't take off in flight like a bird can. So birds can take off from the ground, from a stop, but bats, on the other hand, are going to use the gravity from the fall to get just enough air under their wings to take off. So Indiana bats are probably going to spend the longest time hanging upside down during the winter months because they're true hibernators. So in late summer and early fall, Indiana bats will migrate from all different areas of the Midwest and eastern part of the United States into caves and abandoned mines. And they're going to choose those places because, again, the temperature is consistent and it stays above freezing, so that good insulation. They'll cluster together with different species. Sometimes there will be over 500 bats in 1 square foot of space. So that's going to help them insulate as well, being all close together. And they're going to slow all their bodily processes down. So they're going to slow their heart rates, their breathing, and their digestion, and they're going to rely on the food, on the energy and weight they gained in the summer and fall to get them all the way through the winter. Lately though, getting through hibernation has been the toughest challenge to Indiana bats and other bat species in our area. If they're disturbed at all during hibernation, all those bodily functions that were slowed down return to that normal pace, and that's going to cause them to use a lot of energy they might not have to spare, and they won't be able to get back until the warmer months when their food is available again. People have tried to help them by limiting the number of people that can go into these caves or abandoned mines, even just blocking sections of them off at certain times of year when they know the bats are hibernating. So limiting the people that have access to the bats has also helped a lot with combating what's called white nose syndrome. So you may have heard of it. It's a fungal disease that appears on the bats' noses, wings, and occasionally other parts of their body, but it irritates the bats. And again, it causes them to wake up, disturbs them, and those bodily processes are going to speed back up and cause them to use a lot of energy they might not be able to replace. And the disease is actually spread from bat to bat. So you have hibernation when bats are coming from all different places, all different states, into one cave or abandoned mine, and they're going to be in these big clusters, so the potential to spread goes up quite high. It's believed that white nose syndrome is also spread by people, so we can have it on our clothes, on our shoes. So as we go cave to cave, there's a potential that we could be spreading it that way. It's estimated that anywhere between 5.7 to 6.7 million bats have already died from white nose syndrome since it got in the US in 2006. And it's going to be affecting not just the Indiana bat, but several other hibernating bat species. But on the bright side, starting this month, Indiana bats that have made it through hibernation will begin heading to their summer habitats. So females will form what are called maternity colonies, and these can be large, up to 100 female bats. Males sometimes stay by themselves or form much smaller colonies, usually just about 20 or so. They're going to look for good summer habitats. They're going to look for those bat houses or trees with a variety of roosting places. They like to be close to water because they do drink water. Females especially want to be closer to water for when they do give birth to those pups, to be able to go get water and not have to go too far. Also, water is going to guarantee tasty insects like mosquitoes. They'll also try to look for places that are going to avoid some of those predators or be out of reach. So they have to worry about animals like snakes, raccoons, owls. So to kind of wrap up this video, I know there's a lot of myths out there about bats. I'm hoping that I debunked some of them for you, because bats are super important to the ecosystem, especially when you're talking about the food web here in Indiana. So continue to check our social media this week and next week to learn even more about Indiana bats and some more about how we can help them. Thanks for watching.